I'd like to continue our discussion. All things were created by God. This is the second installment here of a video. And during this time period, I just want to share with you some things that have rattled around in my mind as it relates to evolution versus creation. Things that I couldn't warm up to evolution about, and they were unanswered in my minds. One of them was emotion. What is the purpose of emotion as it relates to evolution, and how did it develop? Where did it come from? This sort of thing. Now, I understand the importance of fight or flight, but there are other things that to me are just as important, like love. Where did these come from? Tenderness. What is the point of this? And I don't know that all creation shares these emotions, but I know that humans do. And I've been intrigued by this. Emotion. What is the evolutionary function of it? What is the purpose? Where did it come from? The other thing is I think about emotion is I think about beauty. And what is the evolutionary purpose for beauty? What is the purpose of a flower? What is that there for? Because evolution has this idea that you've got to have a purpose, which is rather interesting to me that something would create itself and know its own purpose, but it seems to be that's the theory. And so what would be the purpose of a flower? And why all the different kinds of flowers? And why are some birds absolutely gorgeous and others aren't? And I've been told that it's so that the mating process would continue. But if you've ever seen a mallard, he's beautiful and, well, she's kind of plain. And so some birds, it's vice versa. Female's beautiful and the male's plain. So if there's a pattern in this whole evolutionary thing, which is what I was told, how come that breaks the pattern? We talk about birds. I think that's something that's interesting also in birds is some of their migration patterns. You take Canadian geese, that's a phenomenal migration pattern. They're not the only ones. Turtles do the same. And also you'll see salmon will do that. They'll be born in freshwater. They'll swim down into the ocean. They will transform in the ocean, swim thousands of miles, and then return to die where they were born. How did they know that? It's amazing. One of my favorite, we were talking about birds, favorite bird is the woodpecker. This is a bird that's unlike any other bird on the planet. This is a bird that will choose to burrow into a tree to get a grub as opposed to just going on the ground and getting it like a chicken. And so he will beat his head against this tree that he can burrow in there. Now, that beak is harder than any other beak that's there. And you have to understand that the shock that his head is experiencing is unreal. So his neck muscles are stronger than anything you've ever seen. And how he doesn't cause himself to create a concussion, I doubt was by evolution. And the other thing you see is that most birds have 3 fingers on the front and 1 on the back. He has 2 on the front and 2 on the back, that he can position himself on that tree so he doesn't knock himself off when he's pecking. Once he gets a hole and he sees that grub, he's got to stick his tongue in that hole to get that grub. Well, this is rather interesting, is our tongues are right here and connected. Go do some study on the tongue of a woodpecker and how that thing travels back around his brain. The other thing that happens is that he's got to somehow grab that bug and pull it out. Well, he's got this little glue factory in his mouth that excretes some glue that he goes in, he grabs that bug, pulls it out. Well, what does he do then? Because if he's got a bug that's glued to this big long tongue and he tries to swallow that bug, he'll swallow his tongue. When he drags it back in, there's some solvent that's excreted that allows him to swallow that bug. Absolutely amazing. No other creature that I know on planet Earth that's like that. Some other things I find that are interesting is that there are some little bugs with tail lights. We call those, well, it depends on where you're from. Fireflies. Some places call them that. And their little tail lights up. There's a fish that has a headlight, and that's called an anglerfish. No other fish has these things. And I don't know about you, but I would find that a headlight would be extremely helpful. But I don't know how that I would evolve to that point. Then there's the giraffe. This thing is unlike anything else, and they say that he evolved because he wanted to get the leaves up on the top. He's an overachiever, apparently. Well, what's interesting in this is that we know that the brain requires a tremendous amount of blood. And so his heart is absolutely huge because he's got to pump that blood all the way up that neck into that brain. That is a lot of pressure. So what happens when this giraffe, with this big heart and all that pressure, decides he wants a drink of water, and he lowers his head to get a drink of water? With all that pressure, his brain should explode. But he's got valves along these arteries that keep that from happening. The other thing he would happen is if he was drinking water and he saw that there was a predator and he needed to raise up and run all of a sudden, that when he raised up, now there would be this shortage of blood and he would immediately collapse. But he's got this thing in his brain as like a sponge that absorbs all of this blood so that when he raises up, he's got a reservoir of blood that he can run and head off. Now, how did all this happen? Have you ever given this any thought? There are a lot of things out there when you really begin to think about them that just boggle your mind. Take a look here. Here's some sun rays coming in. You got the sun that is burning what? Gases? And for how long? Well, for the creationists, it's been, just over 6,000 years. So that's a long time. But for the evolutionists, it's even longer. So how does he explain where all that fuel comes from and how it's not already burned up? I don't know how long you can go in a tank of gas, but I can't go that long. There's a lot of questions that I have about evolution that I just don't feel like are answered. And yet when I read on evolution, and I read on it this morning, one of the articles I read said, I don't know why people keep talking about this as a theory. It is a fact. Well, interesting is that when something has become a conclusion or a fact, it seems that all the questions may have been answered. And I feel like there is more questions in my mind than answers. And I haven't covered them all. We're approaching 9 minutes, and I'd like you to comment on your thoughts. What do you think? Are there things I've missed? Are there things I'm not seeing? I'd like your help. Or are there some things that you see a lot like me? Leave it in your comment section. I have no intention of stirring the pot here. I honestly don't. These are genuine questions that I have. I believe that God created the heavens and the earth. And I believe that you can see his fingerprint on everything around. I have started this journey in 7th grade, and I'm continuing on this journey. And the more I look, the more I see God. What do you see? Thank you for your time.